On today's show, all-star snub Alperen Sengun with a monster 39-point, 16-rebound performance to lift the Rockets over the Pacers.
Okay, Alperen Sengun.
And James Harden with a trade demand from the LA Clippers. Could a Rockets reunion be in the works? It's all coming up right here at Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What is up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now the #1 sports podcast network. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian and credentialed media member. Be sure to follow along wherever you listen to your podcasts or on YouTube. Just search Locked On Rockets. On today's show, we're going to be talking about the Rockets' 118-114 win against the Indiana Pacers. Alperen Sengun's absolutely monster 39-point, 16 rebound performance. Potentially a direct response to not being selected as an all-star reserve, playing with a little bit of a chip on his shoulder, I imagine. We'll talk about the other key contributors in this game, the key turning point of this game near the top of the fourth quarter that I think helped seal this win for the Rockets. And then a little bit later on in the program, talk about a good old friend, the bearded one, James Harden, demanding a trade from the Clippers. Could a Rockets reunion potentially be in play at this NBA trade deadline? We'll wear some, we'll throw on some tinfoil hats and run a little wild later in the show. So stick around for that. And of course, want to thank you so much for making Locked On Rockets part of your day every single day, whether it's on your way to work, on your lunch break, in the gym. Thank you so much for being an everydayer. Final score, 118-114. And I know on the surface, it's like, oh, well, the Rockets are just barely scraping by against the Mavs and now the Pacers. And yeah, it's kind of the reality of the situation when the floor just falls out from under you offensively. And frankly, this Pacers team is a lot better than their record would indicate, right? They were in the finals this past season. And you know, I know they had a down year, but they had a ton of injuries to start the year. And this roster outside of Tyrese Halliburton and Obi Toppin is healthy now. No Miles Turner anymore either. But there's still a ton of talent on this Pacers roster. No talent that can contain Alperen Sengun, though. It didn't matter who they tried to throw on Alperen Sengun, whether it was Jay Huff, whether it was Jarris Walker, whether it was Isaiah Jackson, whether it was Benedict Mathurin on a switch, Siaka, it didn't matter. If you were in a Pacers jersey and you tried to guard Alperen Sengun in this game, you were getting flat out cooked. 39 points on 13 of 25 shooting, matching his season high from opening night in the double overtime loss to the Thunder. 39 points, 13 of 25 shooting, missed both his threes, so 0 of 2 there, which also means he was 13 of 23 inside the arc, 13 of 18 at the free throw line for Alpi, 16 rebounds, 7 of them coming on the offensive glass, 5 dimes, 5 turnovers. Just an absolutely monster game in a game where the Rockets didn't have Kevin Durant. And you knew coming, if you're an everydayer and you listened to our Pacers preview for this game, Locked On Pacers host Tony East pointed out that Alperen Sengun was going to be a problem for this Pacers team, that they would have no answer for him on the interior. And that's exactly what it looked like. And the scouting report was clear as day. Rockets funneled so much of their offense into Alperen Sengun on the interior. He had 21 points at halftime, the most points he's ever scored in a half in his NBA career. Was just, play after play after play. They were pummeling the Pacers inside. And generally, the Rockets had, for the first little bit of this game, for the first half of this game, Rockets' offensive approach was actually pretty decent. They lost the first quarter, but mainly just because the Pacers couldn't miss from three. And the Pacers actually wound up shooting 46% from downtown in this game. They hit 12 of 26 from long range. And there were points where it just kind of felt like the math advantage was in favor of the Pacers. But to see Alperen Sengun kind of respond, right, feeling probably a little slighted by not receiving the All-Star nod, coming out, playing with a bit of a chip on his shoulder, putting the team on his back, and putting up this kind of a performance without Kevin Durant in the lineup. There were question marks about, okay, where are the Rockets going to get their scoring from? They've been so incredibly KD dependent as of late. It's great to see Sengun step up and deliver this type of a game. And as nuts as this game was, Rockets at one point held a 12-point lead, and things kind of devolved at the end of this game to where Sengun had a chance to seal this thing on the free throw line. And I'll be completely honest, by the end of the game, Alpi looked absolutely gassed. Like, he only played 35 minutes, I think closer to 36 when you look at if you go find the seconds total. So we'll say 36 minutes. But I mean, just the toll that it takes to be physically banging that way all game long, and to play the style in which he does, right? To score on the interior, to be battling with guys constantly throughout the game. He was wiped out by the end of the game. I'm not making excuses for the missed free throws. He should have sank at least one of them, but the fact that Alpi went to the free throw line with the Rockets up 3, 117, 114, and missed both free throws, but then the Rockets were able to get the offensive rebound. Shout out to Stay Ready crew captain Jae'Sean Tate, who got in the mix, in the fray, and was able to help tip out the ball and basically forcing the issue on the offensive glass, and the Rockets able to recover the missed free throw, giving them another set of free throws to try and put the game away, with Amen Thompson being sent to the line, and then he misses the first one. It's like the Rockets were trying to give this game away to the Pacers at the end. You had the Reed Sheppard damn near turnover at the very end on the inbounds attempt. Like, this game was kind of a sloppy mess at the end, but an ugly win is still a win. And this Rockets team, despite almost being 2/3 of the way through this season, unfortunately, they're still figuring out and learning how to close out at the end of some of these games and how to be able to put teams away. And it wasn't pretty. And it would have been nicer if they could have just maintained that, that sizable lead, if they could have just kept a cozy little double-digit lead and kind of coasted to the finish line, similar to how they did earlier in the season when they were just straight up dominating teams. They haven't been able to do that in a little while, but a win is a win. They were able to put it away. Amen Thompson hit the second free throw, sealing the game at 118, 114. And look, I saw somebody reference this as during the game, I forget who said it, the Rockets have the tendency to take their foot off the gas or something like that. I wouldn't even go so far as say they have a tendency to take the foot off the gas. I would go so far as say they have a tendency to take a gun and point it at the foot that is on the gas pedal and then empty the clip into said foot. That's what this team does. It's not like they just stop trying. It's not that they're not giving effort or anything. It's just they just fail to execute constantly, right? The turnovers come back to kill them, and then they give up transition opportunities. And then when the offense dries up and then they can't get stops on the other end, and you let a team back in. And the Pacers, despite their record, are still a team with very talented players, with an all-star in Pascal Siakam. I'm sure that was probably some extra motivation too on the other end of the aisle, seeing Pascal Siakam being selected for the all-star team and then not receiving the honor himself. So I'm sure Alpi felt some kind of way about that. And he certainly felt some kind of way about Bennedict Mathurin, as those two guys kind of got into it a little bit in this game. I do want to talk about that interaction, and I think that moment near the top of the fourth quarter that kind of sparked a turnaround for this Rockets team and really gave them some life when they felt kind of dead in the water at one point in this game near the top of the fourth. We'll also get into the James Harden trade stuff a little bit later on in the program. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. It's the last call for football on FanDuel. One final Sunday, one last kickoff, the final chance to get in on the action before the NFL season officially comes to a close. This is Super Bowl 60, and FanDuel's making sure you're right in the middle of it with a special offer just in time for the biggest game of the year. Whether you're backing the favorite, riding with the underdog, or building one last same-game parlay, this is the game everyone's been waiting for. This is where predictions turn into plays, stats turn into storylines, and every snap feels even bigger. It's the perfect way to cap off the season and make the Super Bowl even more exciting from kickoff to the final whistle. If you're a new customer, bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win. Make it count, because after the Super Bowl, the season is over. Last call for football on FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 60. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Today's episode is also brought to you by Indeed. Hiring isn't just about finding someone willing to take the job. It's about finding the right person with the right background who can actually help your business move forward. And if you want candidates who match what you're looking for, Indeed sponsored jobs is the move. Because instead of hoping the right person stumbles across your post, Indeed helps you match with quality candidates by boosting your job listing to the people who fit your specific criteria, like skills, certifications, and locations. If you're hiring, you don't just want someone who can help. You want someone with real experience who can jump right in. That's the great thing about Indeed. You can get specific candidates and target exactly what you need. It saves time because you're spending less energy sorting through mismatches. And here's the stat that says it all. In the minute that I've been talking to you, companies like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of Locked On Rockets get $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. That's Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, do it the right way with Indeed. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast, home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. The NBA trade deadline is basically here, and we want to give you a free month of our new Everydayer Club to help you get ready. If you need a group chat to keep up with the chaos, join ours. The Everydayer Club gets you access to a group chat on Discord just for Rockets fans, plus national chats where you can hang out with fans from across the league. You also get ad-free versions of this show. If you sign up by the trade deadline on February 5th, you can use code DEADLINE to get your first month free. Tap the link in the show notes to learn more. There was a point in this game in the top of the fourth quarter where it really felt like the Rockets offense had started to majorly stall out. They weren't really able to generate consistent offense. Alperen Sengun was still kind of getting whatever he wanted, but at the same time, they were really struggling to get, some consistent production from other guys up and down the roster. And it was the turnovers that were really ultimately kind of killing the Rockets. In the third quarter, they wound up turning the ball over 6 times. They shot just 36%, and that completely allowed the Pacers to get back into this game. It was tied up at 87 all going into the fourth and final frame. And near the top of the fourth, Rockets it was a play with Alperen Sengun. He was driving baseline, and it was on a mismatch. Benedict Mathurin fouled the crap out of him, shoved him in the back, and Alperen Sengun took exception to it, right? Probably a little extra, a little unnecessary from Benedict Mathurin. I didn't think anything was like malicious or dirty. I mean, it was a good hard shove in the back. But it kind of ignited things, right? There was a little kind of guys, Sengun took exception to it, double technicals, guys were talking back and forth, all that mess. And from that point on, that was one of the key turning points of the game, because Rockets were kind of dead in the water offensively. And immediately after that, Alperen Sengun, knowing that the officials were going to want to clean things up and tighten up on the whistles, he made it a point to just initiate contact over and over and over. And it was like, the Rockets just marched to the free throw line constantly the rest of the quarter. Free throw shooting won the Rockets this game. They attempted 37 free throws. They hit 31 of them. 31 of 37 from the free throw line. Absolutely incredible free throw shooting by the team as a whole. Everybody not named Alperen Sengun hit all their free throws except for Amen Thompson, who missed that first one at the very, very end, the pair that he split to seal the game. And then Alp missed 5 of his 18, so 13 of 18 for him. They attempted 20 free throws from that point in the fourth. They hadn't attempted a free throw in the fourth quarter until that exchange between Sengun and Benedict Mathurin. And from that point on, with a little under 10 minutes in the fourth quarter, they attempted 20 free throws. They went 15 of 20 at the free throw line. Half of the Rockets' points in the fourth quarter, half of their 31, all came from the charity stripe. That was the almost deciding point of the game. Like Benedict Mathurin choosing to foul Alperen Sengun the way that he did and kind of igniting the Rockets the way that he did, and then Sengun being able to take advantage of that to close out the game. Sengun was responsible for 12 of those 20 free throw trips in the fourth quarter. So 12 of Sengun's 18 free throw attempts all came in that fourth quarter. And for a team that really struggles to come up with consistent, high-quality offense, generating free throws is not a bad gambit, right? If you're going to be physical, if you're going to attack the offensive glass, if you want a game where you're just going to have to muck it up and really grind it out, if that's the style of basketball that Ime Udoka wants to lean into, then by all means, yeah, add the free throws to your game. There was a point earlier this season where we thought the Rockets were going to be one of the top tier like free throw attempt teams in the association because they were generating so many free throws earlier in the year. And then that kind of just fell by the wayside. It kind of disappeared and dried up as a reliable means of offensive production for them. So it was great to see them kind of identify that in real time in the game and lean all the way into it. And it also doesn't hurt that whenever there's a little dust up, a little moment like that, right? That the Rockets, I think they feed off that kind of energy. Amen Thompson jumping in to play peacemaker between Alperen Sengun and Benedict Mathurin was hilarious, though. So Jeff Green, Uncle Jeff, thought it was hilarious too because he was giving Amen Thompson all kinds of hell over on the bench for it. Cracking Joe, you could see him playfully teasing Amen Thompson about how he did Tyler Herro dirty, throwing him across the Toyota Center floor. There's a screen cap of Jeff Green like sitting on the bench like with his fists up like ready to fight, looking at Amen Thompson. So look at Amen Thompson growing up before our eyes. No evil twin in this game, but that moment seriously like helped kind of gift wrapped the Rockets some offense when they otherwise were really struggling to generate high quality looks. And Alperen Sengun may have still been able to do damage and score and keep working in the paint. He certainly was still able to do some work, or he was able to do a majority of his work at the free throw line, actually all of his work at the free throw line. He went 0 for 3 in the quarter. And again, I attribute a chunk of that to the dead legs from kind of how he had been playing through the game, because he was fantastic in the game up until that final frame where it just felt like he was just running out of gas based on how much the Rockets were utilizing. He had it was like a 45% usage rate or something absurd for this game when I was looking at the stats afterwards. So understandably, being able to lean on the free throw shooting to close this one out was a key moment. And then there was another key moment a little bit later in the fourth quarter that I want to give Jabari Smith Jr. a lot of credit for. And that was right after Alperen Sengun goes to sit on the bench. Ime Udoka needed to give Alperen Sengun a little bit of a breather, a little bit of a rest. And it was, I believe, 104, 101, only a 3-point lead. And the Rockets went small. They didn't bring Capela back in. They went with Jabari at the 5, kind of their speed lineup, if you will. And Jabari, the very first offensive possession after Sengun sat down, it wasn't pretty, but Jabari Smith Jr. drew a foul, drew contact, got to the free throw line, sank 2. And then the Rockets got a good defensive stop on the other end. They came down and Jabari Smith Jr. cans a trailing 3-pointer. And that 3 plus the free throws gave the Rockets a little bit of an 8-point cushion there, and some breathing room for the minutes where Sengun was catching his breath on the bench before clocking back in to finish this one off. So a very important little moment there, because the Rockets, without Sengun in the game, had looked really rough at times trying to generate some offense. And so that stretch without Alp could have gone really poorly, and they could have lost hold of the lead, let go of the rope, and Alp checks back in, and then they're trying to dig themselves out of a deficit instead of being able to defend a lead, which is ultimately what wound up happening. So as ugly as the end of this game was, which there have been a lot of ugly games, right? Ime Udoka's offense leaves a little bit to be desired offensively. They found a way to hold on, get the win, and you're doing it without so many of your play. Like at this point, I know that Rockets fans are probably fed up with like, oh man, it's a chore watching this team. Yeah, they're battling injuries, man. No Fred, no Steve-O, no KD in this game. Like, you're missing 3 guys who are all like starting caliber guys. So I'm trying to be a little bit more sympathetic towards this team and kind of what they're going through at the end of the day. And there were other key contributors to this game. Again, I mentioned Jabari there a little bit, 19 points, 6 of 12 shooting, had that little 5-point sequence in the fourth quarter that was really important. Tari Eason had some buckets and had 10 rebounds. Amen Thompson, not the prettiest game ever, but 16, 11, and 7 from him, a couple steals, couple blocks. He had one really big block on Pascal Siakam with like just under 2 minutes to go. Like, I mean, he's like volleyball spiked it off the back of the backboard. It was absurd. Reed Sheppard getting the start in place of Kevin Durant, played 25 minutes, didn't wind up being the one out there on the floor closing this one out, which not the most excited about that, but it also wasn't the greatest Reed Sheppard game ever. 11 points on 4 of 13 shooting, 1 of 7 from downtown. He had the near turnover at the end, didn't hold on to the ball down the stretch and passed it back to Alperen Sengun when he probably should have held it to try and knock down the free throws at the end. There were some learning moments for Reed Sheppard in this game for sure, but I still maintain that he needs more of these high leverage minutes to actually close out games, to learn what to do and how to close out games. And then off the bench, I mean, shout out to every member of the Stay Ready crew, right? Tate, Holiday, I guess Capela has been upgraded from Stay Ready crew into regular rotation guy. So I don't know if you give him a ton of credit, but Tate especially. Before I wrap up this segment, Jae'Sean Tate gave the Rockets some much needed energy and was infectious in his play. The captain, the longest tenured Rocket, 8 points, perfect 4-4 from the floor, had some good defensive possessions, a +17, a team best +17 in his 14 minutes of run. The Rockets really did need that little spark from Jae'Sean Tate, and credit to Ime Udoka for playing him and keeping him out there in the lineups that ultimately wound up helping the Rockets put this game away and win this one. But overall, good win against a Pacers team that had Siakam play like an all-star with 27 points on 12 of 21 shooting. Bennedict Mathurin put up 25 points on 8 of 15 shooting, got to the charity stripe 10 times, knocked down 9 of them. And as a team, they shot 46% from deep. So Rockets withstood a really good Pacers team that had been playing roughly 500 basketball in, recent weeks. So I think it's a good win for a young team that was missing their most dynamic offensive player, or at least their deadliest offensive player in Kevin Durant. And Alperen Sengun stepped up in a really big way, and so did everybody else. But I do want your thoughts on this Rockets win against the Pacers. Give me your thoughts in the YouTube comments. Coming up, we're going to shift gears, talk a little bit about the bearded one and his trade demands from the LA Clippers and the most outlandish scenario in which a Rockets reunion could be possible this season. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode was brought to you by TurboTax. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax full service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the stress or the guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. They handle everything from W-2s to self-employed forms, and they work to get you every single deduction possible. You can upload your documents, go about your day, and get updates right in the TurboTax app. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in if a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year. Just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit TurboTax.com/local to book your appointment today. And final segment here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. And I got one more point about the Pacers game that I wanted to get in here. This was maybe the best that we've ever seen the two-man game look between Alperen Sengun and Reed Sheppard. Like, Reed managed to hit Alp on like a couple different moments, a couple different like pocket passes rolling to the rim. Honestly, I can't remember the last time we saw Alperen Sengun receive a pocket pass from anybody. It might have been J.D. Davison like a few weeks back. Because nobody on this team can throw like a proper pocket pass, like that little bounce pass, coming out of the pick and roll, hitting Alp on the roll to the rim, where he can just take like a 1-2 power gather and like elevate straight up to the rim for a dunk or like an easy spin and then layup. Like, it's very similar to how Fred VanVleet and Alperen Sengun operate, right? So seeing that two-man dynamic between Reed and Alpi, it's not perfect yet. It's definitely not anywhere on the same level as Fred VanVleet and Alperen Sengun, but the Rockets need more of those reps. Like those two guys in particular need reps together, because if there's a future where the Rockets believe in Reed Sheppard in any capacity, right, as their third overall pick and a guy that they believe so much in, then you're going to have to find ways for Reed and Alpi to coexist on the floor. And to this point, it's almost like Ime Udoka has been unwilling to play them together at times, and they have a very distinct lack of chemistry when they play together, right? Like the chemistry that Reed has with Steven Adams or Clint Capela is miles beyond the chemistry that he has with Alperen Sengun. And on paper, those guys should have great chemistry together. So I don't know where the disconnect is between them, but it was really encouraging to see how Reed was really looking for Alpi, how Alpi was trusting Reed to set up some offense and get him going and feed him the ball at times. So I did, even though it was a rough shooting game for Reed Sheppard, I did think some of the passing was really good. Some of the ability to get the Rockets in and out of their offense was actually solid. And he needs more of those reps, man, because there's only one guy on the roster that can do what Reed Sheppard does. Well, technically there's two guys, but one of them's out for, quote unquote, out for the season, whatever. So anyways, there were some encouraging signs from Reed Sheppard in this game that I was invested in. Anyways, let's shift gears here. And the news dropped late Monday night that James Harden wants out of LA, doesn't want to be a Clipper anymore. And there's a ton of speculation as to why. We really don't know. Like we're kind of operating on like zero info at this point, other than he wants out. Doesn't want to be in LA anymore, despite how good LA has been playing as of late. And the reality of the situation is the motives, frankly, are probably money-based. It's probably because, he's got a player option on his contract this offseason. He probably wants to secure one more big contract to ride off into the sunset with. And the Clippers probably don't want to pay him one more big contract because they, from what I have heard or seen online, as far as the discourse is concerned, seems like maybe the Clippers are gearing up towards like 2027 free agency, and they don't want to have like, a ton of like long-term money on the books or that kind of thing. And they want to try to lure some free agents to LA because it's LA. And because of that, right, they're not willing, they don't want to commit to James Harden long-term. So he's probably looking for a team that will commit to him long-term. And because of the fact that he essentially has the same implied no trade clause that Fred VanVleet has in his contract, he has veto power over any possible trade. So now the Clippers and James Harden are working together to try and find him a suitable home. And the Cavaliers emerged as, as a front runner, a potential James Harden for Darius Garland swap, which would honestly probably be great for the Clippers because Garland gives them a much younger timeline. You have Garland and Zubac to build around in the post-Kawhi era, whatever. But James Harden has all the power in this situation because he can veto any trade, and he's not going to go anywhere that he doesn't feel like he can stick around or go. He's not going to go anywhere that he doesn't think isn't going to pay him what he feels like he's worth moving forward. Now, does that mean a max salary contract? Probably not. But maybe it means the Clippers are like seriously lowballing him and they don't want to give him anything moving forward. And they were like, hey, we'll give you like 20 million a year. So I don't know. But looking at this Rockets team and looking at their biggest, most glaring weakness of not having a reliable ball handler, a guy who can get them in and out of their offense, a guy that can set up other people, a guy that can take the pressure off of Kevin Durant and Alperen Sengun and initiate high-level offense and carry the team offensively for stretches if need be. James Harden, Jimbo Harden checks all those boxes. Now, look, walk with me here because I posted it online, and man, it is like dead even split down the middle. There are some people who are like, please, for the love of God, bring us back James Harden. And there are other people who do not want James Harden anywhere near the city of Houston ever again for the rest of their lives. Harden is a very polarizing figure amongst Rockets fans. Understandably so. The way he left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. And the fact that he has yet to experience postseason success in his post-Rockets career also kind of works against him, right? It's like, oh, he's a playoff joker. But I can't help but imagine a James Harden able to play third banana to Kevin Durant, who's still playing at a top 10 level, and Alperen Sengun, who on his best days plays like a top 15, top 20 player at minimum. He gets the Rockets exactly what they need, which is a ball handler, a guy who can set up the offense, and a guy who can reliably get them in and out of their offensive sets. He leaves a lot to be desired defensively. He's basically a turnstile on that side of the floor at this point, but maybe Ime Udoka is able to motivate him. Maybe playing with Kevin Durant again is able to motivate him. Maybe playing with all the young guys and playing for the Houston Rockets again is exactly what he needs, trying to bring a title to the city of Houston, achieve what he didn't get to achieve in his first stint here. Maybe that's enough motivation to be able to get him playing at least neutral level defense again. You don't need James Harden to be a defensive stopper. You just need him not to be a massive negative on that side of the floor. And so this is where we have to don our tinfoil hats for a moment and think about how it could happen, because I'll be from the jump. It is very unlikely, like basically like almost a 0.0001% chance that it happens. Not impossible, but highly unlikely. But from a mathematical standpoint, there are actually a couple different ways the Rockets could pull this off. They have enough outgoing salary to be able to, even with, now things get really tricky because like there's two kind of avenues that you could go. The first of which is you throw together a combination of like Steven Adams, Jabari Smith Jr., and Dorian Finney-Smith, some capacity like those three guys. And you'd have to get creative with it because Jabari Smith Jr. has the poison pill provision in his contract because of his extension being signed. So his outgoing value is actually like somewhere around like 22, 23 million a year instead of what his current salary is. So like that makes like things weird, like as far as trying to match salary. But you could offset that by potentially sending DFS or Steven Adams to a third team, sending him into like a team with some salary room to be able to absorb an outright salary, or a TPE to send him into, something along those lines. And then on top of that, you still have to be able to fill those roster slots to get yourself back up to 14 available players on the roster. And I haven't like combed through the exact numbers, but it would be really pushing it. The Rockets, I think, would be able to technically squeeze in a couple guys under the like prorated vet minimum and still be able to flesh out the roster, even doing like a 3-for-1 deal to get James Harden in Houston. But could you imagine, right, like a lineup of Harden, Amen Thompson, Kevin Durant, Tari Eason, and Alperen Sengun? And then off the bench, you'd still have, well, you'd be a little bit more thin at that point, because you lose, as polarizing as he's been this season, you lose Jabari, and he's been an innings eater for you minutes wise. So you lose that. You lose two of your wing defenders in Jabari and DFS, unfortunately. But you address the biggest weakness of the team, which is the fact that they don't have a legitimate guard, a legitimate lead guard, a ball handler, what have you. And so, frankly, I'm not a fan of doing the trade in that perspective. And that doesn't even get into like what you'd actually have to give up asset wise to get James Harden. Because again, the leading contender to potentially land James Harden is apparently the Cavaliers, because they're willing to put forth Darius Garland. Now, again, James doesn't go anywhere unless he agrees to go there. And so like Minnesota's also been heavily mentioned, and people are looking at Houston, even though there's not any like hardcore reporting suggesting Houston is eyeing James. And from my own digging, from my own asking around, it doesn't seem like it's a direction they're going to go. Because I immediately, as soon as it became even a remote possibility, I started poking, I started asking some questions. I don't think it's going to happen, but it doesn't change the fact that it's a possibility, that the avenue to do it is there. Now, this is where you need to put your tinfoil hat on and walk very slowly with me, because this would be the only that I probably wouldn't do it under the previous scenario. Like giving up those pieces, giving up DFS and Jabbar, you're giving up too much of your wing depth at that point. And on top of that, probably having to throw in like an asset or two to convince the Clippers to go ahead with the trade. So I don't know. But there is a version where if the Rockets could sit down and convince Fred VanVleet to waive his implied no trade clause and use Fred VanVleet's salary and send him to the Clippers, you throw in, I mean, actually, if you throw in Steven Adams' contract, it's actually a perfect match because Fred VanVleet plus Steven Adams equals James Harden's salary down to the dollar, $39.1 million. If you could convince Fred to do that and convince him to waive the no trade clause and then decline his player option and re-sign him this upcoming summer, if you could get away with just sending out Fred and Steve-O, who are currently injured for this season as is, and some assets, couple picks, whatever it needs to be to convince the Clippers to send you James Harden, then you get a Rockets team that effectively adds James Harden, and you don't lose anything because all you're losing are the two players that are already hurt for this year, and you're doing it with the under-the-table assumption that you're getting Fred VanVleet back in the offseason to begin with, which the Rockets would like need to promise Fred VanVleet like a front office role for life at that point, like plus a statue in front of Toyota Center. Because could you imagine how revered Fred would be amongst Rockets fans if he was willing and able to make that sacrifice and do that? Hell, Draymond Green was on his show the other day talking about including himself in a trade for Giannis and then just coming back to the Warriors this offseason. Like, yeah, send me out a trade for Giannis. I don't care. Include my salary. Send me out. And then I'll just come back in the offseason because he's got a player option. Now, Draymond's accomplished, he's won a few more titles and he's probably made significantly more money in his career than Fred has. So it's a taller ask for Fred to give up $25 million and decline a payday, a player option like that, and come back to the Rockets for whatever they'd be able to offer. There would be a lot of trust at play. And I'm never going to argue in favor of like a player trusting an organization with how cutthroat this business is and how organizations backstab players all the time. But could you imagine that? James, Amen, Durant, Jabari, Sengun, and then off the bench, still have Reed Sheppard, Okogie, Tari, Eason, DFS, Clint Capela. So not only a James Harden, Kevin Durant reunion, but a James Harden, Clint Capela reunion as well. You have those three offensive phenoms between KD, Sengun, and Harden, and you have all the defensive stoppers around them. I'm going to be completely honest. I think that team gives OKC a very serious run for their money in any 7-game series. It addresses the Rockets' biggest weaknesses. And on top of all that, you'd still get Fred VanVleet back next season under this crazy, outlandish hypothetical. Because then you'd re-sign Fred VanVleet and you'd either bring him back and let him go back into the starting lineup. Hell, maybe bring James off the bench. I don't know. You figure it out, right? Bring Fred off the bench, let James keep starting, what have you, stagger them, play them both together. I don't care. But that team becomes incredibly deep. You don't sacrifice any of your young core. You cash in a couple picks from somewhere, right? To a Clippers team that has no draft capital, that is bone dry as far as draft capital is concerned. So I leave you with that, right? I don't think it's likely. I don't think it happens. And maybe James doesn't even get moved, right? Maybe he's just stuck in Clipper land and then he'll sign somewhere this offseason. But it's at least worth considering. It's at least, it's a total pipe dream, but it's not completely based out of reality. Like, it's not like we're talking about, oh, well, they can trade Holiday and Okogie and Jeff Green and get like, it's rooted in, the money would work in a couple different ways. They could make it work if they got a few things to go their way. I don't think that they would do it, but it'd be silly if they hadn't thought about doing it, is all I'll say. So with that, I leave you to mull that over as we approach and head into the NBA trade deadline. Keep in mind, we will have our Rockets trade deadline preview that we recorded with our weekly co-hosts Ben Dubose and Brandon Scott before this James Harden news broke. So I don't want to say it's dated, but it doesn't involve the James Harden news. But we got into a bunch of good stuff. We talked a little bit about the Giannis stuff. And we talked about some other potential targets for the Rockets to consider: Kobe White, Bobby Portis, things of that nature. How they should be utilizing their assets, whether this season they need to punt on it or, invest a little bit more in this season and trying to round out this current roster. There's a lot. We got into a lot of good stuff on that podcast. So be on the lookout for that in your podcast feeds. But I wanted to address the James Harden stuff as soon as possible, just because I know Rockets fans are going to be foaming at the mouth to hear about it, whether it's because they want to hear about it because they don't want anything to do with James Harden, or they want to hear about it, or you want to hear about it because you want James Harden back in Rockets red. It's going to be interesting to see the reactions to this, but I am curious your thoughts on this crazy scenario to potentially bring James Harden home. How poetic would it be to bring James Harden back and have James Harden and Kevin Durant be the two guys in Rockets red dethroning the defending champion OKC Thunder? It's all, you couldn't write it better if you tried like that. I just I'm caught up in it now. I'm convinced. I want it to happen. I don't think it will, but I want your thoughts. Give me your thoughts in the YouTube comments. But as always, thank you so much for checking out the show. Remember, the best way to help us grow the show is to listen every single day on a podcast platform of your choosing, and then like, comment, subscribe on YouTube. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And we look forward to having you back right here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.